Well, thank you so much for coming, and especially to our elected officials for joining us this afternoon. We are so fortunate to have this well-staffed panel to discuss the topic of affordable housing and homelessness in Kitsap County. I'm going to start off with one question to kick this off. I'm going to pose a question that I hope will allow our panelists to share a little bit about themselves and how they're looking at this very broad and complicated issue. And then we'll give the panelists a nice amount of time to respond and share their views. And then we'll open it up for questions from our in-person audience as well as our online audience. So with that, I would start thinking about what questions you might want to pose here in the room and also on the chat for our virtual attendees. So my question is, there is a lot of work going on at a state and local level that will impact affordable housing and homeless services in Kitsap County and within our cities. Could you speak to some of the work currently underway, your role in moving that work forward, and how these efforts address the housing priorities for your constituents? And maybe if I could, because we're sharing a microphone here, we could start with Mayor Wheeler.
All right, thank you so much. And thank you to the League for hosting this important forum. So we, and many of you know me and what my priorities have been. And so year by year, we have tackled affordable housing in a number of ways. And mainly it's by increasing supply. So this year coming forward, you will see from the city of Bremerton, of course, pending approval from our city council, once we complete work with the planning commission, will be increased allowances for duplexes, triplexes, and multifamily housing throughout all of our residential zones. So you'll see ADUs, more of those. So we have gone so far as to allow up to 2 per residential property with no owner occupancy requirement. So that's while 2 is progressive, no owner occupancy requirement is up there, and it shows the priority and the importance that we put on this. So streamlining the permit process to the best of our ability, just some different programs in place to make sure that when we put housing online, that we are ready to partner with nonprofits, as we have been doing multiple times over the last few years with Evergreen Bright Start, Mills Crossing, Manette Townhomes Project, the Cedar House. Those are just a few examples up here just recently of how we can put more affordable housing online. So that'll be continue to be a priority. I look forward to the questions from the audience.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Greg Nance. I'm honored to be your representative down in Olympia. My parents decided to move from Seattle across the water when I was 3 months old because it was far more affordable in Kitsap than it was in the city. And we had good schools here. And we've got to work hard so that those 2 things remain true for the working families of today and tomorrow. We have an affordability crisis across the state, across a lot of the country, and we are feeling it acutely here in Kitsap. I'm really honored to be here with amongst League members to talk through really challenging issues, because we need to hear from you and your ideas, your suggestions, and your tough questions and your complaints, because we've got to be moving faster to address the root causes of this issue. And at the state level, we've got a lot of work to do, because I think the state has inadvertently increased the cost and prices of housing. And we've got to make sure the regulations we're putting in place are actually well considered and are working in practice, not just in theory. 3 places that I'm focused around housing is really increasing supply across the continuum. It's not just homeless services, it's not just market rate, it's everything in between. We need more housing across that continuum. 3 places where we're aiming to work stronger with our county and our cities are, number 1, the incentives. It is more expensive to build housing in Kitsap than in neighboring counties. It is more expensive to put a shovel in the ground here in Kitsap than it is Mason or Pierce or even King County. That's got to change if we want to keep up. One way that we're doing so is with the multi-family tax exemption credit. If you are outside of a city, the current law is you are not eligible for this. And yet a lot of the fastest growing areas of Kitsap County are unincorporated Kitsap. We are right here in Village Green. This is unincorporated Kitsap County. I spent the first years of my life in unincorporated Kitsap County. We are not eligible for these tax breaks that make it much, much more effective and cost efficient for developers to develop. We've got to change that. There's legislation that I'm co-sponsoring that would change that, would make it a lot more competitive here in Kitsap to build strategic density, which is the second big thing working toward it. We need smart infill. And I appreciate Mayor Wheeler. For years, this has been a drum he's beaten on. We need to accelerate these efforts. We have beautiful forests and farms and fields. That is not where we should be building the homes of tomorrow. We have a lot of opportunities for us to actually infill and create strategic density on bus lines with Kitsap Transit and near our ferry terminals. We can do that if there's political will. I think we've got it. The leader on my left, Mayor Mathews, will tell us more about what's going on in Bainbridge as we build out the next, really the next cycle, the next chapter here. And the final piece, we need to build a workforce for tomorrow that is able to help us build these homes and build affordable housing. I'm honored to be the vice chair of the Higher Education and Workforce Committee in our House of Representatives. And this is a big emphasis. How do we bring more young people into vocational education and honor intelligence and genius in all its forms? Not just the kids that love Shakespeare or math like I did, but everybody. Even if you have a gift for machines or engines or computers, you should have a path to a great profession right here in Kitsap to contribute. And that's exactly what we're aiming to do. Likewise, looking forward to your tough questions here in a moment. I'll pass it to Mayor Mathews.
Thanks, Rep. Nance. So I'm Mayor Mathews from Bainbridge Island. I moved to Bainbridge 17 years ago from New York City. And it's really great to be here with you today. I think one of the most important things that we can do as we start to address homelessness, as well as have conversations around affordable housing, are to have more gatherings and conversations like these. The more we cross-pollinate and speak to each other and answer questions and ask questions, the better it's going to be. I think we need to involve all of our community. It was really, really encouraging to see today's Bainbridge Island review had, it was an article. It was like, what are the, Kitsap looking for community input for 5-year homeless plan. I was like, how timely is this? So I'll start with the elephant in the room. It's probably, Bainbridge has traditionally maybe not done our part in dealing with affordable housing. Or we've not done our part in even saying that we have a homeless issue because of maybe the stigma or things concerning that. And so my role has been really as a bridge builder and to, interact with these great leaders that I'm with today and others to get out of our silos and get over the bridge and figure out what's really going on in our community as a whole. And so that's what I've been really excited to see, that we are really making some changes on Bainbridge Island that are going to have a real impact. We have started working with the Low Income Housing Institute on our first affordable housing project on city land, which is right as you come out of the ferry terminal, close to services, close to transit, everything that our community has said it wants. It does not, we don't want to be building housing in our conservation areas. On Bainbridge Island, the conservation area is 91% of our island. So it leaves us with a pretty limited area that we've identified as where we're going to concentrate any growth will be in Winslow. And I'm thankful that the state has given us many tools and is talking about all of these bills. I don't think they're a one size fits all, but I see them as tools. And so it's really important that all of our communities have all of the tools available that might work for us. And so that's been really exciting to see some of the options coming out of this session. Multifamily tax exemption. We have a project on Bainbridge Island that was the first to take advantage of housing built on clergy land or on church land. And the Bethany Lutheran Church stepped up and went through quite a bit with Planning Commission and quite a bit to get their project going. They're now called the Finch Green Project, and they are taking advantage of the MFTE. So it'll be really cool to see communities that are unincorporated be able to take advantage of the same things. And I think that was all. I tend to not want to get caught up in the data, even it's really important. So folks go out and do the point in time count, and they count exactly what's going on, who's unhoused, where they're unhoused, why they're unhoused. I try to not get so caught up in the data that I get too far away from the humanity of it, and that these are people and that these are our neighbors. And there are lots of different reasons, especially on Bainbridge, for homelessness. We had liveaboards who lived on the water for a long time, and some were displaced and moved right into the forest. They're there by choice. Our police know where they are. They drop them off firewood in the winter. That's a different story than folks who might be homeless through treatment, or through they're a trans child and can't go home, or the other reasons other than addiction and mental health that find people unhoused. So I just try to keep all of those things in mind, and I'm really glad to be working with our community. One thing that is important to say is I'm really, really, really honored to be the mayor of Bainbridge Island, but I represent a council. I'm just one of 7. So anything that I say today, I don't know if every single person on my council agrees with me, and I don't want to be speaking for them. Yeah, I think that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Ashley. So hi, I'm Deb Krishnadasan. I am the senator for the 26th district, and I stepped in when our great Emily Randall was elected to our U.S. representative back on the East Coast. So she is fighting the big battle back there, and I was, so she was elected in November, and I got appointed in December by Pierce County and Kitsap County commissioners and council members, and I got appointed December 11th, and I was in my first committee meeting 8 a.m. December 12th. And have been going ever since. So I'm 7 weeks into it. I'm unfortunately not on the housing committee. I'm on 4 other committees: agriculture and natural resources, K-12 education, state government, and transportation, which I was very glad to be on the transportation one for this area in particular, and then the K-12 education. My background is in schools. I was never a teacher. I went to college, the first one in my family to graduate from college, to be a teacher. But the year I went there to Western, they changed the program to a 5-year program, and my parents didn't really know how to navigate, and I didn't know how to navigate getting loans and whatnot to make it through. So I changed my major to a 4-year program. But anyway, it led me to this seat today, and I'm very excited to be here. So some of the work I'm doing, the biggest one probably I'm doing right now in terms of helping create more affordable housing in our communities, is that I have a school bond bill out there. It's 5186. It is coupled with Senate Joint Memorial 8200. And what this is doing is, for years, I know in some of our communities, it's been really challenging to pass school bonds. In my community in Gig Harbor, we were 20 years of failed bond after bond after bond, and our schools were just so overcrowded. And that's, again, back to where I got involved in education. I stood up a group that finally passed a bond after 4 attempts. And we were able to build schools, and it changed the way our community felt about each other. It supported our teachers and ultimately helped our children. So the bond bill that I'm proposing changes. I initially put it out at 55% to make it more attainable rather than 60%. But we had some amazing work with our teachers union and our builders unions, which they don't work together very often. So I can't wait to get this joint picture with the 2 groups together. But they have agreed to work and partner and bring that bond approval rate, that threshold, down to 50%. And in doing that, we reduce or actually eliminate the impact fees that builders pay to school districts. They're still going to do their city impact fees, but to schools, The mindset there is it's, for a builder in Gig Harbor to put in a house, it's between $11,000 and $18,000 impact fee just for schools. And if we can take that off the builder's plates, they can start delivering homes that are a little bit more affordable, so that our teachers actually can afford to live in the communities where they work, which would be a very nice thing to do. So that is, and then bringing that rate down to 50%, and hopefully, it's still a majority of a community. At the end of the day, the community gets to decide what their schools are and how they reflect their community. And so that's where we are with that. It's the farthest we've gotten in this. We've had to try to change the supermajority for years and years and years, but this is the farthest we've gotten. So I'll keep working on that. Everyone mentioned too, it's the shortage of housing. The prices keep going up. I have 3 young adults. The thought of them ever owning a house is beyond what they can think about right now. We need to change that for them. And so we need to start increasing that supply. We need to allow people to build ADUs on properties. We just talked about a bill in the Senate yesterday. And it will, was Senator Saldana. It will allow ADUs to be built on some properties that where before the zoning was not going to work. So there's things like that we can be doing. We need to make it while keeping people safe, while keeping our environment safe. We need to allow for builders to cut through some of the permitting, not take away the permitting, but could move through it quickly. It's taking them years and years to even get the permitting. And by the time they build the home, it's like much more expensive to build it. So we need to cut those things down so that they can start delivering more affordable housing. I think I'm glad to hear it's still going in the House. The multifamily tax exemption, it died in the Senate. So I will support it. Representative Nance, please get it over to the Senate, and I will work it over on our side to make sure that passes through as well. So anyway, that's fun.
I'm Becky Erickson. I'm the mayor of the city of Poulsbo, and I passed out these. They're on your table if you want to take a look. This is a picture that I took yesterday morning of something called the Nordic Cottages. And the Nordic Cottages are, there's only 8 apartments there. They're small. And, but they are going to be built for the poorest of the poor. This is for people that have something that's called 30% or less of adjusted median income, which in the city of Poulsbo is about if your income is about $2,000 a month, you would qualify, or below, you would qualify to be in these houses. And we've also, they are for elderly, have to be 62 years or older. So these are destined for old people, and I can say old people because I'm old. These are for old people that are poor. Now, the interesting thing about this project is that it's owned by the city of Poulsbo. It's going to be managed by Housing Kitsap, and Housing Kitsap is our Kitsap Consolidated Housing Authority for Kitsap County. All of the jurisdictions inside Kitsap County work through Housing Kitsap, with the exception of the city of Bremerton, who has their own housing authority. They are going to manage it. In other words, do the waiting list, verify the applications, all of those pieces for this particular project. We should have a ribbon cutting for this. We hope in July. It will be open. Now, we can build 2 more of these projects. The city of Poulsbo owns this. We can build 2 more of these projects by using something called the 0.1% for affordable housing. The city gets about $600,000 a year, and we can bond out and build 2 more. We're already building 1. We can build 2 more. Build 3 of these 24 apartments for $600,000. Now, how the heck do you do that? Well, this is how you do it. You work with your housing authority and you get HUD vouchers, federal vouchers, that basically subsidize the rent. It's a federal program, and each housing authority manages these vouchers. So These apartments will rent for about $1,500 a month, but the money comes from the federal government. We take the $1,500 a month for each apartment, combine that with a little bit of subsidy, and we retire the debt, the bond, in order to build it. So we hopefully will build 2 more of these in the next couple of years. The other interesting part is we built this on 1/3 of an acre. It's a very small piece. It was a horrible piece of property, to tell you the truth. It had a lot of problems with it, infrastructure problems, and big stormwater issues, sewer issues. But it was in the right location. It was right next to our library downtown. It's walking distance to downtown. It's walking distance to Safeway. You do not need a car if you live in this complex. But it was free because the city owned the property. Now, every jurisdiction in Kitsap County has property that they own. You know, all you have to do is go to the assessor's office and have them pull the data and say, what is all the non-tax property in my jurisdiction? And he'll give you a list. And that list will be city property, it will be religiously held property, it will be property of all different sorts, for whatever reason, they're not paying any property taxes. And so then you drill in and you find out where these pieces of property are. So we have 2 more pieces of property that the city owns. The free, we own it free and clear. It's a leftover from an affordable housing project that was done 25 years ago, 30 years ago. And we wanted to build 2 more. That's how you build affordable housing, because there's never enough money for this. You have to be clever. You have to be creative. And you have to get a situation where once you do it and you figure out how to do it, you do it over and over again. You do more and more and more. Now, the next thing the city has done is we worked through the Kitsap Regional Coordinating Council with Ashley and Greg, Mayor, okay, to commission ADU plans, accessory dwelling unit plans. There's now 6 of them that have been developed. They are acceptable in every jurisdiction in the county. The plans are ready to go. They're from anywhere from 400 square feet to 1,000 square feet. You can come and pick them up and they're free. All the architectural work has been done. All you have to do is come and get them. They're at the city of Poulsbo now. They'll be distributed to all the rest of the city governments here very shortly. Come and pick them up. Now, if you live in Kitsap County, you can take those plans and you're going to have to pay some kind of connection charges, etc. What we're going to try to do in the city of Poulsbo is the only thing you'll have to pay for is something called the general facilities charge when you want to build these. Now, what's a general facilities charge? Those are the hookups for utilities. Okay, that's sewer and water. But everything else, free. Okay, we're not going to charge you for it. So that you can come and build ADUs. Now, state law changed last year. Legally, any single family residential you have to allow them to have 2 ADUs on their property. So in other words, our single family residential zoning was changed by state law last year. So any single family residential in an urban area, as an urban growth area or a city, has to allow you to build 2 ADUs. Okay, period. So these are ways that we can provide affordability in our communities. And they're right there. They're working right now. We just need sustained funding sources in order. We need the assurity that the HUD vouchers will keep coming from the federal government. I don't want to get big, huge politically, but we're all nervous about anything that's federal, right? Okay, we need to have that level of assurity. The other thing, at the state and the local level, we need the seed capital. The local jurisdictions need seed capital in order to make these programs work, to get them kicked off and to get them rolling. And but once you have that little bits of money, you can do it. You can build affordable housing. Now, not as much as we need. This is what I call subsidized. This is subsidized. How do we build a house or a dwelling in our jurisdictions that somebody can buy for $400,000 new or $350,000? That's the real conundrum, because We understand the subsidies. We know how to do that. What we don't know how to do is build housing for two wage earners that are making modest incomes, have a couple of kids, have a joint income of maybe $75,000. Where do those people, how do they live? How do they buy a house? How do they develop equity? We haven't figured that out yet. And part of the problem is the Growth Management Act, to be real frank, where you are shoving people into urban areas and not allowing them to build outside those areas. Now, the Growth Management Act, I totally support it. Don't get me wrong. It's the rural lands and our trees and our wildlife, they need to be protected. But on the other hand, if we restrict the supply of buildable properties, we're going to have price fluctuations. It's going to be tough. So we have to figure out how we're going to provide more land or more building techniques inside of our urban areas in order to provide a greater supply. This is all economics, supply and demand. We don't have enough housing right now because we didn't build any for about 4 years during the Great Recession, 5 years. There was foreclosed homes throughout all of Kitsap County in 2010. They were everywhere. Nobody wanted them. Okay. That whole period of time, there was no housing stocks increased. Now, of course, everybody wants more housing. So we're in the catch-up mode. We're in the catch-up mode. I'm sorry, that was a lot of information. I'd love to take your questions.
Thank you so much for that. All incredibly useful information. And you reminded me, Mayor Erickson, I feel to say that County Commissioner Rawls sent her regrets she wasn't able to join us today. I have benefited hearing about some of the work that the county's doing on ADUs from her recently, so thank you for that. We'd like to open it up to questions from the audience. I'm going to bring this microphone over here.
Hey, Amy.
Yes.
There's actually a couple in the chat and
Okay.
I'm not saying we necessarily go first, but I'm just letting you know that we also want to include them. So we can go here in person and then I'll do the chat.
Okay, why don't we go back and forth? Please come forward.
Hi, my name's Alina. I live in Silverdale, and the unhoused population that's closest to me is on the Clear Creek Trail. And I hear a lot about them in my local community. I hear a lot about them on social media. Probably at least once a month, somebody's asking if it's safe to walk on the Clear Creek Trail. And then the feedback that you get, the thing that weighs heaviest on my heart about this issue is there's so much vitriol from people in our community. And I'm sorry. So all of these policies that you guys are talking about, they sound great, but there's this contingent in our community, and I don't know if they're large, but they're certainly loud. They don't really want to solve these problems. They just want the problem to go away. So what my question to you would be is, how do you get the support of people like this in our community for these kinds of policies? What have you done or what can you do to get people to really back these so that we have real solutions?
I can start real quick on housing there, right? You know, one of the things I've done, I'll be quick because I want to hear, I know we all want to hear from others, but you know, my background, I did grow up in East Bremerton in a 2-bedroom duplex. And it was a dense working class neighborhood. It was workforce house. And if we're just talking about housing, and so to maintain that type of life that we had growing up, where we had a mix of different levels of working class amongst professionals. That's how it was in East Bremerton, all throughout Bremerton. We actually have to do these policies to create opportunity for that same type of environment. That way you can have that retired school teacher, that first apartment coming out of the house and going to work in the workforce. If we don't do this, then affordability gets out of hand, and then we begin to gentrify, and then we lose that diversity that makes us so rich. So what I get to do from my background is reduce the stigma. And hopefully I can do that by example, that it is okay to have duplexes, multifamily, triplexes mixed into our neighborhoods. It's okay. Good people, all good people, we need to appreciate each other, and it does work. So I'll just turn over. That's just a small part of this. Anybody else?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate your question, and I was at a Silverdale community gathering last year, and I could feel some of the passion and a little bit of the vitriol that you're mentioning. I think part of this is around fear. When folks are out on a trail and you get surprised by somebody, that can be a little scary for many of us. I get that. We've got to do more to support these folks, many of whom are not there by choice. They're there by life circumstance, many of which is very, very difficult. At that Silverdale community meeting I was at, I got to see something pretty remarkable. I got to see Doug Washburn over here and his team that are out there meeting these people human to human, day after day, building relationships so that these folks feel supported. They feel safe to actually get some of the services that we have right here in Kitsap. It's remarkable what our team at the county does under Doug's leadership. It's remarkable seeing the Kitsap Mental Health Services team and what they can do. Part of it is building that bridge. A lot of the folks, Clear Creek Trail or in our woods, they're there because of life circumstance. Many of them live here as well. I think we've got to find ways to bring compassion there and then have these services ready for it. We're expanding our East Bremerton Kitsap Mental Health Services campus so that we have more capacity. We have growing needs and growing strain, and we've got to tone down some of the vitriol and passion there and replace that with some compassion and then services that we know can work for people and empower the folks doing the work like Doug and his team to do this really, really difficult work day in and day out. I feel like that's a key place where the state has. We are working to expand these services. We've got to go faster and we've got to support the workforce that makes that work.
Thank you. This is a great question. I could feel it. And so thank you for that. I think it's really important for us to lead with compassion here and love. And I say this a lot, but love is probably something that you don't hear a lot in politics. But I think we need to bring a lot of that back. And so I try to lead with love and compassion. And I do have lived experience with it as well. It's not traditional homelessness, but I lived in New York City and didn't want to go home and admit that this job that I had didn't work out as well as it should. So I would like pretend that I still worked and just ride the subways all day. I didn't have an apartment. So I think that's homeless, you know? And so I can feel where these folks are coming from. And I think that's really important. And I think another thing that's important is to give our community the facts. I love the point in time data. And I was going through it today and I'll actually say it because it's really good to know what we're working with. So in 2019, and pre-pandemic, the most commonly reported cause of homelessness in Kitsap County was eviction or loss of housing at 37%, followed closely by job loss and mental health issues at 36% and 34% respectively. Post 2020, mental health has shot up immensely to be the top self-reported cause of homelessness in Kitsap. In the past 2 years, about 2/3 of unsheltered people reported experiencing difficulty with their mental health. Just under half in 2019. But by 2022, almost 70% of respondents cited mental health as the main reason they became homeless. And that's now down to 57% last year. But issues of addiction have shot way up. So in 2017, chronic substance abuse was around 26%, and basically went up 10% every year. Now we are at, pretty high. So in 2024, over half of unsheltered people struggled with substance abuse issues, but only 24% attributed it to cause of their loss of housing. So I think like the more our community understands why folks are out there and who they are, the more they can relate this to members of their family or themselves. And I think it's always important to see ourselves in everyone else and who we can become. So I just think a lot more of removing the stigma, putting ourselves into other shoes, spreading love, and sharing our lived experiences.
Thank you. So I'll go back to my school stories and my focus there. Again, great focus that everyone else was mentioning. But so looking at Peninsula School District, when I was on the school board, I was shocked that we had 8,000 students in our district and 271 of them were homeless. And I just about fell out of my chair and asked our schools, what are we doing to help these children? one of, so I want to make sure the work that I do down in Olympia supports our schools so they can continue to help those children. I get nervous about the McKinney-Vento, making sure so if their family moves, they can go back to their home school, and schools are able to provide transportation so that we don't lose that child in the system, become homeless that way. Kids that drop out. What are we doing in our schools to keep our kids engaged in education? Not every child wants to go on to a 4-year college or even a 2-year college, but what are some things that we can be doing in our schools that encourage children to stay in school, to learn and go out and get a job, a livable job? So I'm all about workforce development, really working with our school districts to design programs that offer alternatives for students for going through the educational system. I found most of the time, and I will say it as a parent myself, the barrier sometimes were our parents. When I would say, hey, there's other options for your child than to go to college. Oh, I won't go to college. But look at this, there's this great, your child can be out earning $60,000, $70,000 a year in this trade. And we can get them a pre-apprenticeship program in our high school. Let's move towards those things to then pick up and uplift our students. So I don't want to put it all on the shoulders of our schools. Like everyone else said, it is a community uplift for helping homeless problem. And we all need to break down barriers, work together. There's amazing groups in our communities doing things for homeless people and to help the community, but we're sometimes working in silos. We need to start working together, partnering, and together we will do greater things. I've always believed that, and I think the more we can focus on that, and it's a community effort. And then the other thing I'll just mention is, as I'm a new legislator, I really want to understand the ramifications of law that we pass. What are the mandates? What are the unfunded mandates we're passing down to our cities and our schools? What are the things if we're talking about rent stabilization? What does that do? I just talked to a small renting family the other day for short-term rentals. They have short-term rentals, and their short-term rentals are for people that are just getting out of prison. They're in these things for a little bit while they get their feet on the ground and go out into the workforce and find their own home. But we're looking at a bill that's going to put 4% more taxation on these short-term rentals, and they're like, we can't afford to keep health. We do this for basically nothing for these people to get this transition housing. And so I guess really understanding any law that I sign on to, any bill that that gets passed through, make sure I understand what's going to happen on the ground in our community. So that would be the only other thing I want to talk about that. So, yep.
The city of Poulsbo has something called the North Kitsap Recovery Resource Center. It's, I think we're up to 4 FTEs, four full-time people that work there. We also partner with 13 separate agencies in order to bring services into the city of Poulsbo for addiction, mental health, homelessness. The city of Poulsbo has been working on this stuff for a very long time, not because we wanted to, but because we found ourselves in a situation where we were hit earlier than most communities with addiction, meaning that we had a lot of addicted people in and around the city of Poulsbo because of a series of circumstances and a doctor that was prescribing a lot of opioids. It was bad. And in 2013, the chief of police in the middle of a council meeting dumped a whole box of used heroin in front of the council. And it was like, well, that's a wake-up call. And we have to do something about this now. And so that began our journey, the city's journey about how do you deal with addiction and mental health in the community? Because that is really at the root cause of the vast majority of our homelessness. It's a combination of those things. And so we've been working on these problems for a very, very long time. And the culmination is this resource center where we have 13 different agencies and the Suquamish tribe all partnering together to provide services for people, to get them into stabilized housing, to find treatment for them. The success story I like to tell is about a young man named Adam. Now, Adam's running around the streets of Poulsbo for the better part of two or 3 years. Young man, in his late teens, early 20s, blonde hair, dirty, mentally ill and addicted, carrying a pink blanket in his arm. He was digressing, he was getting worse and worse. And he was running around and he was going like this at people on the streets, pretending like he had a gun. And I wrote a terrible email to a whole bunch of people that said that, look, if we don't do something about Adam, he's going to die. He's going to die. And that shook some people up, and we got Adam into an involuntary commitment at Kitsap Mental Health. And they got him some treatment. And they released him after 90 days. And he went into something called the Gambit House. Now, the Gambit House is a house that the city of Poulsbo owns that has men in it that are subjected to drug testing, and they must be employed. And Adam went into the Gambit House. He is now clean, sober, and employed. So I tell this story to say that if you work hard and you have the right partnerships, you can really help people and get them out of the cycle of addiction and mental health crisis. But you have to have resources locally in collaboration with big resources, countywide resources. Thank you, Doug, for all the support that the county gives on so many different ones. But if you take people one at a time and get them help, it really is that straightforward. But that takes a lot of money and a lot of energy and a lot of effort. But it can be done. And that's what you have to do. You have to look at each person individually and find the solution that works for them. And then when you do that, you have to have the resources to follow through.
So I'm gonna just read off some questions. There's a whole bunch in the chat. So I'm gonna read them off to you, and then you just pick whichever one, feels right to you to answer. If you're like, that one, I got that. That's what we're gonna do. So what steps will be taken to make sure that rent prices won't be increased to price out low-income families? Cheaper houses are a start in theory, but corporations are buying up and are building houses as rental purposes and charging high rent that low-income families can't afford. Has modular housing been considered for ADUs and multi-residence buildings? What regulations are in place on the state and local levels that will prevent renters from increasing rent every year until the lower income families get priced out? Will HOAs be regulated to prevent the HOA fees from overtaxing renters and homeowners? And then followed up with, can we ban HOAs? There's also one that's on a bigger scale, being that the current federal administration cut funding for housing and homeless programs. How will this be funded in the future if the federal funding is being taken away? Is there a state funding option? And then I think some other people have some questions, and they're gonna put them in the chat. So yeah, who wants to go first?
Well, okay, I'll talk about rent stabilization. I think that's the big topic. It's one of the House and Senate Mathews bills that is being hotly contested in the legislature right now. And you guys can kind of pick up my pieces when I finish. Half of me says, hell yes, we need rent control because the rents are going through the roof and we're displacing people. The other half is if you put rent controls on, you have a hard time encouraging people to build more rentals. And so it's a very tough economic model when you basically regulate price without understanding what that's going to do to the supply after the fact. So we have to be really careful. I'm torn. I don't know the right answer on this. I really don't. I've seen communities that have rent control and it's been a real train wreck. I've also seen communities that seemingly have done it and they seem to be pretty okay to me. So I don't have an answer on this. So I'll let the state legislatures decide. Go ahead.
Don't have that answer either. This is the one that has been really struggling. I've been really struggling with, for many of the reasons why, what Mayor Erickson has articulated. You know, the real problem, thinking about the 7% tax increase cap, most of the people that we're trying to help with this, they can't afford $1. So if you think about 7% cap, okay, well, the landlord will then put 6.99% every year after year after year. That will get people out of housing very quickly. But again, I'm really struggling with, and I don't know what direction I'm gonna go. I'm hoping that somebody comes, I know, Representative Richards is working on an amendment. We got to come up with something else because I don't know that that is the answer. Bellingham, I believe, has done something. I think they did an 8% cap. They've been in for a year and it's been going okay. But I think so the other issue with this is somebody does move out of a unit. That unit then becomes open in terms of what they can charge. Right? And so a landlord's going to take advantage of that and then really jack up. And then guess who's not getting this house? I think it's a gamble to do this. And I fear where it will take us, but I'll keep looking at all solutions, all ideas. And again, I don't know where I land on this one yet, but I do know that I really am anxious about what it will do for landlords getting out of the business and then decreasing the house supply, which is opposite direction we were going. And then also, again, those people we really need help, they can't afford any more, let alone a 10% increase year after year. So no solution there, but that doesn't mean we can't stop working on it. And hopefully between the House and the Senate, we can come up with something that is a solution, or at least moving in that direction, right? Yeah. Really, you take this.
Yeah, we are Americans. We put astronauts on the moon. We can aim for a bigger, more ambitious target than just accepting a 7% rent increase into perpetuity. I looked at our friends in Austin, Texas, that looked at the same challenge we have now, an overheated housing market. They weren't willing to accept 7% in perpetuity. They instead said, we need to build. And with strategic density, with transit-oriented development, with infills, with ADUs, with lot splitting, a lot of the tools that we're actually starting to see work here in Kitsap. I just looked at the new data. 2 days ago, they reported rents are down 22%. In Austin, Texas, one of the most livable places in the country. We need a much, much more ambitious target than just acknowledging that we're going to price our neighbors out only 7% of the time. That's not good enough. One amendment I will be proposing on this legislation is a sunset clause. We do need some relief right now. Our friends are struggling across the income continuum, but Senator Krishnadasan, Mayor Erickson are spot on. There are unintended consequences to painting with a very broad brush. It's a little bit like going in a china shop with a sledgehammer. If you're not careful, we actually hurt the people we're trying to help. I think 2 years or 4 years of capping rent increases makes a lot of sense, gives us a moment to begin a much, much more ambitious building program and get our act together on that to actually help the renters we're trying to help without the long-term capital freeze that would be disastrous for the neighbors we're most trying to help. So this is flawed legislation. We got to work at it. Most legislation begins very flawed. You work at it. We can aim a lot bigger. We put astronauts on the moon. We can do a lot better than 7% increase.
And maybe just offer one, while, and this is an incredibly tough challenge, and so I'm not going to offer a silver bullet solution to it. I appreciate our Senator Representative taking this on. But what we can do at the local level, and we can't solve this obviously at any level alone, but at the local level, there's things like rental assistance and weatherization. These are programs I was able to initiated in 2018 with Kurt Wiest and Larry Iyer, both of them former executive directors, one BHA, Bremerton Housing Authority, the other Kitsap Community Resources. Outstanding agencies. The rental assistance is eviction prevention that is still operating today. So the weatherization is also out there happening today. And what these do, one speaks for itself, eviction prevention. You know, we can get people 2-3 months to get them caught up, get them, if they fell behind on rent, we can buy them some time to work with the landlord. Weatherization done properly, which it is done through KCR, reduces your energy bills by up to 30%. So this helps, and these are all income-based too. So you don't apply for these programs, or you don't have access unless you income qualify. So again, these are local solutions, great partners. We're working on a displacement program this year. So if income qualify again, if you are displaced by new development, we will be working with the tenant and offering assistance. If you are displaced by living in a substandard house. And so if we're going to increase code enforcement, this is one of our goals, to get our housing standards up. So if the punishment for the tenant is they have to vacate to get these improvements done, well, we will have a program in place charging the landlord to assist with relocation while that housing upgrade is being accomplished. And so, and then we will underwrite that, but the landlord will ultimately be responsible. That'll be coming online this year. So just local solutions. They don't solve this, they buy time.
Great, thank you. Questions from the audience?
I'm wondering if there's anything being done to keep hedge funds and profit-driven corporations from buying up our housing stock, the mobile homes and the apartments, and just jacking the rent because they can.
Thank you. I don't know if one of you want to take that first. I think Greg.
I'll start us off. Appreciate that question, and that's one of the issues that keeps me up at night, hearing from our friends in Poulsbo that have been gotten massive rent increases overnight, or repair orders that would threaten eviction if not met within 60 days. A lot of these are deeply unreasonable, and they threaten our way of life in our community. I'm working with the representative named Adam Birnbaum from the 24th district, which is across the Hood Canal Bridge, the Olympic Peninsula, Kitsap Olympic Peninsula. We have a lot of neighbors living in mobile home parks. And this has been a target of a lot of these private equity and kind of hedge fund types. This is a place where I think rent stabilization and smarter regulatory framework makes a lot of sense in a more targeted way for us to just show that this is not where you're going to be making all your money off the backs of some of our most vulnerable neighbors. This is a place where we've really got to have smart protections in place. So that is one place where I think rent stabilization can make a lot more sense than just casting a very broad net. It's actually targeted on a lot of places that are the juiciest targets currently, which is very unfortunate, but that this is predatory, and the state needs to step up, because I don't think we're going to get help from our federal partners right now. We've got to step up.
Thanks, Representative. Completely agree with everything you just said. I think that this is one of those issues where the broad paintbrush is the last thing that we need to be thinking about. If we can separate some of the issues, just as Rep. Nance was saying and speaking about it that way, I think we'll get a lot further. This is an issue that is really talked about on Bainbridge and in our community. So I think our average price, the last time I looked, was like 1.5 million. It might have gone up a little bit. And that's completely unaffordable for most people, but there are large corporations or investors from other countries who that's nothing. And so they buy the house at 1.7 even, just because they know at 1.5 they might not get it. So they bid 1.7, they know they'll get it all cash, and they have the home, and then they can Airbnb or hold on to the home or sell the home at whatever time. Well, what this does is it takes homes out of our housing stock, and it takes homes out of what could be rentals. We all need diversity of housing stocks. We need all kinds of different homes to make this work. And so that, for me, is one of the bigger issues that I'm focused on, is figuring out things that are predatory, that I completely separate those from housing issues. Predatory issues are crimes, and that those should not be affecting our
Great, thank you. Victoria, do you have any more questions online?
Yeah, there are more. There's a lot. So I will go with increasingly concerned about the rental costs coming from the new administration HUD rules. What can we renters do? And then this one is very interesting to me. What changes will be made to protect renters with service animals? A person's individual story. I've been told repeatedly by property owners that they will not even consider renting to anyone with an animal, service animal, or otherwise. They are considered medical requirements. And, you know, how do we prevent property owners from rejecting people from their options?
Just, Victoria, I'm gonna jump on one of those, and you can relay this, Northwest Justice Project or Kitsap Legal Services. We can get that service animal situation resolved right away.
It's illegal.
It's illegal, isn't it?
Yeah, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So that landlord needs to be talked with.
Otherwise, we'll take one from the person audience. Okay.
Hi, I'm Susan Daniel, and thank you for coming, this has been great. We're so lucky to staff that. I heard about the ADUs you're talking about, and so if you've got a house, you can have an ADU, if I understand that. You can have two, so, you know, I don't have a grandmother to live out there, and my kids, I don't, so that's who I think of when I think of ADUs. There's family members living there, or, you know, I don't want, people with substance abuse issues living in my ADU. Just how far, I like the concept. How far is the ADU concept going to go to solve housing?
Thank you, and I'll also mention it's 1:59, and we have a very busy group of elected officials. Some of them have other events they need to be to later today. So that will be our final question.
There's no silver bullet on anyone. Okay, let's be honest. It's this tool might work for this group, this tool might not work for these people. It is, we need to have housing all over everywhere for all kinds of people. And as I said, because of the Great Recession from 2012, 9 through about 2014, we didn't build any houses. So now we're in the process of catching up. Interest rates haven't helped either. Okay. ADUs, you might not want to be a landlord, but maybe your neighbor does. Okay, it is a way if you have single family home and you would like to create extra revenue for yourself, you could build ADUs and rent them. Okay, provides affordability to someone or someone else and income for you. So there's that piece. The other piece of it is that really some of the ADUs are really small, so it could potentially have affordability for people. You know, it's almost like renting a room, and so there's those. We need to think about ways to house people that are working and are the working poor, to be real blunt. Okay, if you're working at McDonald's, you're working in, you know, as a clerk somewhere, you're not making a lot of money. You can't afford to rent an apartment, at least in Kitsap County. So where do you live? Now, ADUs might be a way to solve that. Boarding houses, okay, is another opportunity for people to share housing in order to those that have lived in modest ways. You know, I think about myself when I was 18 or 19 years old, and if I faced this kind of rental market, I don't know what I would have done. It would have been very, very tough. So I think that all the tools have a place, okay? And we need as many tools as we can in order to address this, what is it, housing, what it is. I hope that helps.
We need all the tools, and ADUs are a tool. we have a planning commissioner, Alex Prudhomme, who has been drawing out what to me is just this really opened my eyes, this idea of traditional ADUs. You know, we think of either above a garage or upstairs in your home or somewhere else. And he's saying, you know, why are we limited to the stacking on top? You know, why don't we do something where we are stacking units next to each other? You know, I never thought of that. On Bainbridge, we're mostly on septic. We're very limited by our sewer capacity, and multifamily and a lot of affordable housing and septics don't go together traditionally. ADUs are a way that they can. ADUs are also a way that get our kids into the trees and into out of the city. I see a benefit in them and just they're in their place. I think they are just a little other tool in our toolbox that we're going to be able to use. I found it interesting that we've been able to put, I think, 2 ADUs per parcel for a while. And so I was asking our planning department the other day, so how many folks have actually come in and put in a permit or asked to do that? I don't think any have yet. So folks, this is out there. You can put 2 ADUs on your property. I'm not sure on Bainbridge, I have to check because we are not a city, we are actually a single source aquifer. And so we are often exempt from these things. So I'm not sure, but it's out there. So if you hear of tools and if you're not sure if you could use them, come try.
And thank you, Susan, for that. And of course, cottage housing, and there's just lots of different tools out there, part of the infill toolkit. But one thing I always promise to help them to make this comment at these housing summits. And one of the reasons demand is so high is something that we all noticed coming here today. We live in one of the most beautiful environments in the world. And my hat's off to the local electeds, those who came before us, those serving today, and because of the amount of effort that's gone into preserving what we have. And so the better job we do, which is taking into consideration our environment while we develop, the more attractive we're becoming. So I for one, would not want to lose one to gain the other. And so what may work in other areas, what may work in other areas, I have to all go in and look at a statistic and drill down why development occurred at such a rapid pace. What was the trade-off? And then is it an apples to apples comparison? We are in an eco-sensitive area here and we love it. And so I think, just from the group, I can't speak for everybody, but I know we're all doing the best we can to take on this housing crisis head on. At the same time, preserving our greatest asset, our environment.
Thank you. I know we could have spent probably 8 hours with this panel talking about everything, but thank you so much for sharing the work that you're doing on a city level, a county level, a state level, incredibly valuable. And I think Robin wants to make some final remarks, but please allow me to interject before we turn it over to the president of the league to say that for all of you, Kitsap League of Women Voters is your partner in this work. And so we're very interested in bringing our resources to ensure that we're creating housing for everyone. Thank you.
I just want to say again, thank you all. One of the benefits of living in Kitsap County, I have found, and I've been here for about 10 years now, is the availability of our elected officials. I've never lived anywhere where people are so available and so willing to talk to the community. And I think we know what a precious resource that is when we look at what's going on nationally. So my gratitude for that. All of you, we couldn't do what we do as a league without all the people that are in this room. And I hope I say it enough, but I thank you. And I am also grateful for everything you have done over this past year, because we have been one very, very busy league.
And I think the other thing that we've learned today is that we could do about 15 more of these panels. There's a lot of interest. So I don't want to wear you out. We're already worn out. But anyway, I think that we should have more to come. And thank you all and have a great rest of your day and enjoy some sunshine.